And give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 6 o'clock, the top story. Well, a new one-in, one-out migrant deal between the UK and France has come into force today, aiming to send some Channel arrivals back across the water within just days. The EU-backed pilot lets Britain return asylum seekers deemed inadmissible in exchange for taking in others with UK ties. But critics say the scheme is too slow, with just 50 returns expected each week. That's despite more than 25,000 crossings this year alone. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper insists it's just a trial and won't confirm exact numbers, saying doing so could aid people smugglers. But Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says it will make no difference at all.
Well, I just don't think this scheme is going to stop the crisis that we've got. We need to stop the boats. This feels like a scheme that's just having an exchange with France. One in, one out does not reduce numbers. It does not reduce the number of people who actually want to come to the UK. And 50 people a week, I mean, that means 94% of the people coming each week get to stay. That's not good enough.
Former Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey has been granted conditional bail after being charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault. The 32-year-old Ghanaian appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court, accused of attacking 3 women between 2021 and 22 while playing for Arsenal. The charges come 4 days after his contract with the club expired. Partey denies all allegations and says he looks forward to clearing his name at the Old Bailey on the 2nd of September. Tommy Robinson has been released on bail after his arrest over an alleged assault at St Pancras Station in London. The activist flew in from Portugal after spending time in Tenerife, where he reportedly travelled following the incident in July. Footage appears to show him walking away from the scene of that incident at the time. He was arrested last night, shortly after 6:30 p.m, on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. Transport police say he remains under investigation. Systemic failures left UK prison systems days from collapse, more than once. That's the warning from a scathing new review by former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Dame Anne Owers. She found the service has been repeatedly pushed to the brink with failures across planning, leadership and funding. The report also reveals the cost of building new prisons has almost doubled, now hitting £10.1 billion. It paints a picture of a system under severe pressure, with warnings ignored and crisis narrowly avoided. Pass rates in Scotland have risen as pupils there have received their exam results. Students are finding out their grades in nationals, highers and advanced highers. Official data shows there has been a slight improvement in grades on last year, and our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has been speaking to some of the students.
I did really well and managed to achieve 5 A's.
5 A's, wow, and yourself?
And I've managed to get 1 A advanced higher, 2 A's at higher and 2 B's, another 2 B's at higher, but I already had an A at higher from last year, so.
Maybe stop showing off now, yeah. I think, you know.
Yeah, we're both really happy, so we just wanted us to work hard. If we worked hard, we didn't care what grade we got.
Yeah, I got on really well, I got straight A's, so I'm happy, I'm chuffed.
And did you expect that?
No, not at all. Absolute maths, I was so scared. I walked out that exam and I was like, I think I've failed, and the fact that I got straight A's, I'm proud of myself and the hard work's paid off.
Straight A's, very impressive. I won't tell you what I got. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you at 7.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to each and every single one of you. I am Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. And I just want to say that last story there in the news headlines, it's absolutely great for all the young uns that have done well in those exams. I've just been hearing there about straight A's. Good for you, but I also just want to say as well, it's not the end of the world, by the way, if you don't actually manage to get the grades that you wanted. Yes, sure, you'll feel a bit down and whatever today, your kids or your grandkids, but honestly, life moves on. There's only one measure of what you can and can't do, and often, by the way, they're just a measure of how much you can memorise and regurgitate stuff. As long as you've got a little bit about you upstairs, a little bit of common sense, and you've got a bit of confidence and you believe in yourself, push yourself forward, that's what I say. So I just want to tell you, if you or one of your loved ones is not feeling that great about your results today, don't worry about it. Onwards and upwards, that's what I say. Anyway, alongside me on the panel tonight, I've got Linda Dewberry, no relation, I have to say, just in case anyone is dyslexic, they're looking at the way you spell your surname and thinking, are those two related? No, we are not. She's a journalist and broadcaster. Alongside her, I've got James Schneider, the former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. You're both very welcome tonight. Your first time on the show. We do like a new face, so you're especially welcome. As are each and every single one of you. I missed you. I've been off, haven't I? I've had a family weekend. It's good to be back. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or you can X me. Now, we speak often, don't we, on this programme, about the not-so-small boats and how on earth we are going to actually sort the whole sorry mess out. Well, we've had a lot of tough talking from our government, and today their kind of much-celebrated deal that many people are calling the one-in, one-out migrant deal with France comes into force today. Long story short, it allows us to send people back to France if their claim is deemed inadmissible in exchange for asylum seekers with ties to Britain. I've got to tell you, by the way, though, it's not one for one at all. It's about 20 in, one out. We, the taxpayers, have got to fund the travel back to France. We've got to then bring those people to France and foot the bill for that. There's also the extra £100 million that we've been giving to France in addition to the eye-watering hundreds of millions of pounds we've already gave them. Don't get me started. Linda.
Yeah, but I think the trouble with this deal here is that it is far too complicated. And I've seen this happen before with other things. From any party, people will tinker around the edges because they are afraid of tackling the problem head on. And this goes on sometimes for years and years and years, as indeed this has gone on, because people aren't doing what they need to do. Now, what we need to do is be able to return the boats. We need to develop a policy that will act as a real deterrent. And by that, I mean there has to be at least a 60% chance that people's application will fail. It is no point in saying that, you know, that maybe there's a 20% chance, a 30% chance. To be a deterrent, those asylum seekers have to believe that there is a more than reasonable chance they will be sent back. Otherwise, their risk calculation will mean they will take it on board and take the risk anyway. And on top of all of that, you have to have a several-pronged approach where you do make a plan as to how you would actually stop the traffickers, the human traffickers, in exactly the same way as you would stop drug traffickers.
James?
So this takes two quite sensible things, but then ties them together and ends up with not very much. So the first bit, which is people who are inadmissible for asylum claims, i.e. they come from a country where claims are very rarely accepted, can be returned to France, and there's an agreement for that. That's a sensible thing. And having people being able to apply for refugee status in Britain from France because they have some ties to Britain is also a sensible thing, having a safe way for people to claim asylum. It seems like linking the two means that the numbers of either are going to be tiny. I mean, we're talking about 50 a week or something they're saying now. There are more than 50 a week people who could be receiving refugee status in Britain who apply in France, so they're not taking, you know, you're talking about risks, the risk, which I think is the right way to be looking at it. It means that you're less likely to take that risk because you're applying from France. But the one point I will slightly disagree on where you're talking about the risk is the percentage chance your application will fail is depending on the strength of the application. So, for example, you know, if people are coming from, you know, I think it's 60% of the small boat crossings, those people, 60% of them are from 5 countries. All of those countries, Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Eritrea and Sudan, are all countries that have very high percentage success rates for refugee cases because those are obviously countries that people are fleeing from. So there are elements of this which are you can see where they're trying to get at, but by linking them together, and having it in such small number is not really either here nor there.
To be clear, I'm talking about the risk of being sent back, not the risk of the application failing. But it would be interesting to find out exactly where these people have come from and from what circumstances they have escaped, because it seems that we can see that the boats are full of mainly young men. There aren't women and there aren't children. Surely the women and children from those countries, the list you've given us, are just as much exposed to danger. In fact, in Iran and Afghanistan, it is women who suffer more.
I actually completely agree with you, which is why we should have safe ways for people to be able to claim asylum, get refugee status in Britain. At the moment, unless you are Ukrainian or from Hong Kong, there is no safe way to claim refugee status in Britain, which, again, when you're talking about the pull factor, that makes it much more likely that people will get to France, which is an extremely hazardous and difficult journey, and then to take the boats. Now, the reason why it's generally speaking younger men who are on the boats is because that is such a difficult journey. If it were easier for women and children who should be receiving refugee status to get it, not having to take that journey, then I think we'd see the balance being different.
But I just feel, I talk to viewers every single day of my life. I listen, I try my best to read as many of your communications as I possibly can. And there is such a unified sense now that no political party that's been in power, whether that's the Tories or Labour, that they actually have the political will to fix this, because people, not everybody, sure, you get those often paid renter mobs with the far-right stupid protest slogans that they have when they call concerned mothers and all the rest of it far right. Those people, I'm absolutely sure, would be delighted to fill this country with asylum seekers. I bet my bottom dollar they wouldn't want them at the end of their road. But anyway, huge public opinion now says that this is just not what we want. Whether it is this, we'll take you from France and we'll swap you over, that people just say, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's
We've
true.
been a very hospitable nation. We're very good, decent, kind people. We've provided asylum to goodness knows how many people. Enough now.
So I think this is why we need to separate out in the discussion refugees, asylum, and other types of migration, because refugees is not about whether we want them, in inverted commas. That's a set of rights which are enshrined in law.
In current laws. Hence, people want to change those current laws.
Fine, but we are clear. We are clear that what we're talking about now, because I've worked with asylum seekers, refugees and evacuees, we are clear that what we are talking about now is asylum seekers. That much is clear.
What much is clear?
What we're dealing with is asylum seekers, people seeking asylum in this country.
Yeah.
That's a different category. You've outlined that.
I completely agree, yes.
Yeah. And what we're dealing with in the boats are asylum seekers.
No, I would argue that what we're dealing with in the bours are economic migrants.
Or indeed economic
Which is completely,
migrants.
I would say, illegal migrants, economic migrants.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look at that boat of men, who, by the way, I couldn't help but notice the imagery of them looking out of their hotel windows, laughing at the taxpayers that are paying their way to be in this country and that have offered this country to those people, mocking the British public. I would not look at those people and go, oh, my God, you sweet, vulnerable people.
I
would look at them and say, you're economic migrants, you're illegal migrants.
But that's the point I'm making, is they're not refugees.
No, asylum seeker is someone that is seeking refugee status and
doesn't have it.
Yeah, it's because you don't get it until it's granted, but you can claim it, which is a right, and it should be a right. And the majority of the people who cross the channel in those dangerous small boats, the majority of them end up eventually being granted refugee status because, generally speaking, they're coming from places and conditions where they should get refugee status. Now, of course, there are some people who shouldn't get the status, and then you can say that they are
but to be honest,
economic migrants that don't have the right to be in Britain.
You don't know how many people in those boats, to address your point, you don't know how many people are in those boats are indeed economic migrants and how many are asylum seekers.
Which is why their claims are processed. And part of the problem that we have is 10 years ago, well, now 11 years ago, 98% of asylum cases were processed within 6 months, so we'd know whether someone should get refugee status and get support or not and should leave. And now almost 0% are done in 6 months, which is why we have the problem.
And how do you distinguish who is an economic migrant and who is an asylum seeker?
So it's whether their claim to be a refugee meets the criteria established in law.
How do you know who they are? They haven't got any papers with them.
I mean, that's the Home Office has to determine who they are. I mean, it's actually a very stringent process. A very good friend of mine recently got refugee status, and his should have been a completely open and shut case. He had to provide huge amounts of documentation, books about how his family had been killed, huge amounts of material to show, one, that he was who he was, and that what had happened to him, and therefore he could get refugee status. It's not a complete, if it were just letting everybody in and saying it was fine, then you wouldn't have the backlog.
You will have strong opinions on this one, I can assure you. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. Front page news today was the headline, "The British state is failing to protect women and girls." I would say, actually, to that newspaper, they're not failing to protect us, thank you. They are actively putting us at risk. We'll discuss after the break.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Michelle Dewberry, Linda Jubilee and James Schneider. Darryl, you've got in touch and said great advice about the school exams, Michelle. The piece of paper in this day and age is worthless. He says millions of people have those bits of paper and they have no job. Yes, Darryl, I do kind of agree, and I absolutely meant my sentiments at the top. But obviously, if you want to be a brain surgeon or something like that, then of course, yes, indeed, you do need those bits of paper. Lots of you actually don't believe that this so-called one in, one out, that's not one in, one out, that this deal is not actually going to be effective at all. I've got to tell you, by the way, we would have loved to have spoken to Yvette Cooper this morning. She was doing the media rounds talking about this policy. Guess what, ladies and gents? She decided that you guys, the GB News viewers, were not important enough to be spoken to. So we didn't get that opportunity to speak to her. She did pretty much every single other channel, but not you. What do you think to that? Anyway, look, a front page caught my eye of a newspaper this morning, the Daily Express to be precise. It was saying the British state is failing to protect women and girls. I looked at that and I thought, hold on a second, you've completely missed the plot, you have, because they're not failing to protect women and girls. They are proactively putting us at risk with their policy choices. Let's just listen to Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
A centralised rule requiring the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to release, and indeed the prison service as well, to release this data. We can't just rely on individual police forces making their own decision because sometimes they choose to cover things up. We have managed to extract some data which tells us, for example, that Afghan males are more than 20 times more likely to commit sex offences than average. We know that people from the Congo, for example, are, I think it's 10 or 12 times more likely to commit violent offences. We saw reporting just a couple of weeks ago by The Sun and the Mail showing that people in asylum hotels, so these are people that cross the channel illegally and are now being accommodated by the government at taxpayers' expense, have committed hundreds of offences, including rapes and sexual assaults against women and girls.
I've got to say, no offence, but I do struggle a little bit listening to that stuff from the Conservatives because so much of this actually occurred under their watch. But anyway, Linda.
So much of everything has occurred across both parties. I think that's the situation we're facing right now because, you know, people are really lacking in confidence in both those political parties. But to address the specifics, I think that it is a very worrying time for girls and women today. I don't think that they get enough protection. I have a young daughter who I worry about enormously. She thinks I worry too much because I'm always going on at her and telling her to be careful about this, that and the other. But where some groups of people are concerned, and specifically, I'm going to, no matter how many people I know, I'm going to talk about Afghans because I worked with them when they were evacuated from the tarmac at Kabul. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that those men that I met, not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, there were notable examples, but many of them were very, very aggressive to an extent that most people, most women would not want to deal with. Now, the reason I was given that position, which was women's empowerment for an Afghan organisation, is because I had a background as a foreign correspondent and they thought I would handle the cultural differences appropriately, which I did. But later on, when I worked inside one of the hotels, I was threatened twice. Thankfully, on one occasion, I was with a former Metropolitan Police officer who was able to safeguard me. But I can't say strongly enough, and it's not just Afghans. I can imagine that there are a couple of other groups of people as well that are very problematic to women. So I really am behind the idea that we need to protect girls and women in this country a lot more.
James?
I mean, we obviously do need to do a huge amount more to protect women and girls in the country. When you look at the how rape is treated by most police forces, if you look at the conviction rates, if you look at how much stuff just doesn't get investigated, how intrusive it is when people make complaints, they get their phone taken away from them and so on. We've had more than one report about the Met Police in particular for having misogynistic practices. So, I mean, this isn't a new problem, and it's not just a problem which relates to data. It's not just a problem which relates to statistics. Now, I think it's obviously wrong to characterise everyone within one group by the actions of any particular group. That said, obviously, having more information, if you can have more information, is correct and should be gathered. There's an element of this which we should say relates to whether someone's nationality can be revealed to the press after a
charge has been laid.
After a charge, right? Where then it's because of contempt of court rulings, it's extremely strict, and rightly so, extremely strict, that what can be said, and it's only things which are strictly very closely linked to what the case is.
Name, address and age.
Name, address and age, but for example, if someone's occupation can be mentioned, if it's strictly things. So, for example, a teacher who has been arrested and charged with an offence to one of their pupils, I think in that case they're allowed to say they're a teacher. But basically these are very restricted things. So some of these things where people are saying, where some politicians are saying, they're not releasing the information about people who are, about individual cases. They shouldn't be releasing it about individual cases if that goes against contempt of court. That's different from gathering up some, data.
But we're kind of getting away from the issue here, which is there is a large cohort of men who've come into this country. And, some of them, I've met them, they've got post-traumatic stress. They're suffering from a condition which makes them more aggressive. And I've met other men, including, I told you, 2, both of whom had threatened me, who are very, very difficult to deal with. And I've got my wits about me. I'm older. I'm not... Obviously, my daughter is much younger, so I worry about women of that age. But, even... Look at the Afghans. How many tribes are there in Afghanistan? Just have a guess.
No idea.
14, right? That's 14 main tribes, and they all argue with each other. So even when the new Afghans came in, when we evacuated Afghanistan, they were not of the same tribe that lived here already in Britain. So there's already factional differences between those two groups, never mind anything else. And as far as I can see, apart from people who've been settled and established and integrated here, they have a very, very different view of women.
Sure,
but why is that fact? Because one of the things that really irritates me as a woman is that when it comes to, I don't know, racism or whatever, people obsess about, it's about your individual lived experience. So if you've lived this experience, everyone has to absolutely accept that what you're saying is gospel. We'll create all policy around fixing the issue as you described to your lived experience. When a woman sits there and says, actually, this has gone on, that's gone on, you name it has gone on, the very first pushback that seems to come from so many in society is you're a bigot, you're far right, you're racist.
Yeah, that's unreasonable.
It is appalling. It is appalling.
It's unreasonable.
I mean, obviously, violence against women goes way beyond, in our society, goes way beyond violence that is done by men who came to the country recently.
I agree, but we're discussing that one point.
Yeah, but it's discussed in such a way that it pretends or suggests that that's the only issue. Take, for example...
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. It definitely doesn't.
If we're going to talk about groups of men and violence of women, which we absolutely should do, but, for example, more than 4 out of 10 of those who were arrested last summer during the riots had previously been reported to the police for domestic violence.
Yeah, true.
Over 4 in 10, we're talking about very, very large numbers. This is not a problem which has recently been imported into the country.
Yes, but if we were doing a programme on that, we would be talking about that.
Yes, but what your point misses is in this country, so domestic violence is a cancer on society. I think the stat is something like 2 women a week are killed by current or former partners. It is a disgraceful cancer within society. And what that demonstrates to me is that we have enough of our own wrong-uns in this country, enough disgusting, despicable men. And by the way, domestic violence also affects men. Women can be perpetrators as well. But what it shows me is, as a woman, there are enough disgraceful, disgusting Brits we do not, therefore, need to be importing any more men that are way more. In fact, I can put a chart up on the screen, actually, just to put this into context for you ladies and gents, because we talk, don't we, about sexual offences and all the rest of it. When you adjust these statistics per capita, and you actually look, if I get that strap thing off the bottom, that little white box thing at the bottom, that is the UK. That is the number of sexual offences per 10,000 people. You can see, if you've got working eyesight, and I mean, if you're listening on the radio, I grant you this, you can't see, but just take my word for it. The UK is minuscule compared to the likes of Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan, Albania, you name it. So yes, James, we have a disgraceful cancer of violence against women. And by the way, we have governments who cannot even bring themselves to even admit what a woman is and seem to think that men can also now be women, which they cannot. So if you can't even define what a woman is, how are you supposed to even protect us? But that's a separate point entirely. But that graph demonstrates your point is accurate, but why then are we importing on outrageous numbers men from places that we know increase the risk factor towards women?
So let's take Afghanistan, which looked, I think, was the worst.
That was the top one.
Was the top one. And we were discussing Afghanistan and refugees earlier on in the programme. Afghanistan's very, very bad country for women, obviously, as we know. And we were discussing how it should be easier for women in Afghanistan to claim asylum here. Now, if there is a particular risk factor, and it seems like you're discussing a whole number of potential risk factors. If people are coming here, you can see ways in which people should receive education, special, special intervention of some sort. But I don't think we can say that all. I mean, you were saying some of the Afghan men that you particularly worked with
if
were
you need to be educated,
not
to rape a woman, then you've got no place in this civilised society.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But not every man who comes from Afghanistan and receives refugee status is a rapist or a would-be rapist.
But no one said that they are.
Far from it.
No one said that they are.
What I'm saying is there's a cultural difference. So, for example, I have helped to deliver conversational English classes to Afghan women. I had to pretend they were in a sewing class because otherwise their husbands would have stopped me because it's a different culture. Now, those husbands aren't they're not rapists. There'd be very few that'd be really, really aggressively violent. But we're dealing with a culture that does not treat women in the same way that we do.
Can we just come back briefly, because I do need to move on, but I do just want to focus on this somewhat. We've just been talking then about, in case you're not aware of the context, so there's been some demands and calls now that actually transparency is now, much better than it currently is in relation to people's immigration status, nationality, whatever. People like Yvette Cooper are suggesting that perhaps we need more transparency. I think it's an absolute dereliction of duty that the data is not collected based on people's immigration status, who these people are, where these people are from. That data is not routinely collected.
Well, I think the Home Office should be collecting the data when it comes to people convicted of a crime. But James is quite right to point out there is a period of time once you've apprehended someone. So you're hunting for someone, you can give out plenty of information. You apprehend them, you're still at that point. At the point that charges are laid, the contempt law comes in and there's nothing you can do until the court case.
But where is that coming? Where is that specific detail when it comes to nationality or immigration status? When you say there's nothing you can do, you can't share that data, who says that you can't? Where is that?
It's in our contempt law.
But then I'm looking at this because this is all around, or in part around, guidance from the College of Policing. And what this says categorically, it talks about things like you can give a suspect's gender, it talks about you can give a suspect's age. There is nothing in this guidance that references nationality or asylum status. Yes, you just talked about occupation and it outlines things about occupation. It doesn't reference nationality or asylum status. So where has this notion come from that providing that factual piece of information...
No, I think I think that advice is looking at it from the other side. So it's saying what are the very limited things that you can say in what context in order to avoid contempt of court. So if there's the worst thing that can happen is the police gives out information that it shouldn't have given out, which then someone who has done something can then get off in court.
How is saying that someone is an asylum seeker risking a fair trial?
It could prejudice their case in something. That's why we have...
Prejudice a jury, that's what I'm really worried about.
But how? Tell me how, because everyone... I hear this sentence all the time.
Jury.
How is... Yeah, but you could say that about anything. It's like people are not robots. People have thoughts and mindsets and all the rest of it. And no one has yet been able to explain to me how, you can know that this is John, he's 20, you can know he's from Bournemouth or whatever, but apparently, if you know the actual facts that he is an asylum seeker, oh my God, you're going to blow everything. Nobody has explained to me why.
Well, all I can say is, and it's a very long time since I covered magistrates or Crown Courts, the contempt laws enshrine what you can say. And that's quite clear. It's age, it's name, it's address, it's possibly profession. But it doesn't go beyond that. But your point is very well made. Why don't we collect the data and file it, because once the court case is going, you can use that information.
Many people would suggest that the reason that we don't do this, because just to let you know, by the way, the CPS, we did go to them for comment, says that the CPS does not maintain a central record of asylum or immigration status. However, this information may be included in a prosecution if it forms part of our case.
In the trial?
Yeah, but so then the jury would know about it then, wouldn't they? Because you're telling me that you can't tell it.
So contempt is when the jury has heard about stuff outside of the courtroom. That's the point. They're meant to, because the judge can say, yes, you should take that on board,
if you're going to be
no, you
prejudiced
shouldn't
because
take
of
that
someone
on.
being an asylum seeker, then you're going to be prejudiced whether you've read that from Mrs McGuinness the cat on Twitter or whether you've heard it from Lord Justice whatever in a courtroom.
I just think that the balance of screwing up a trial versus the media getting to report a fact a little bit earlier before the trial starts, like that balance should obviously go on the making sure that the trial is safe rather than the fact that the media can report a fact 6 months earlier.
Michelle, what you can do is you can collect that information. One of your issues is it's not collected.
It is.
But if you did collect it and you filed it, then you can do something with it later on. You can issue all sorts of documents that make it clear.
There was
it's just that one period of time.
There was a man, he's called Mohammed Lido. I might pronounce that wrong, so, forgive me my pronunciation. He was found guilty of raping and murdering a mother of 3. So there's no contempt of court. Worry not, everyone. He's now behind bars. Good. A request for information was submitted and said, what is the asylum seeker status of this person? Was he an asylum seeker? Like, who is this person? The response was given, actually, it would be a breach of essentially data protection to provide that information.
I think that's ridiculous.
Now, if I am roaming around an area as a single woman and I am at risk because of people in this vicinity, I would want to know that actually I am at risk and this is where the risk factor is coming from. And I suspect, can't prove it, I suspect, there is a deliberate reason why this information is not being collected, why this information is not being centralised, and why it's not there for scrutiny. Whether or not you share that publicly, we can debate that, and we will, and we do. But the fact that you don't even collect that information, that does not sit right with me, ladies and gents. What do you think? Anyway, look, I'm supposed to have gone to a break ages ago. Sorry about that, everybody. Lots more coming up. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's some hot air across parts of northern Africa at the moment, and as that's feeding its way northwards, it's going to push into Spain and Portugal. And here we're going to see temperatures rising through the next few days, could get into the low 40s at times. Otherwise, there will be a spell of showery rain affecting Gibraltar perhaps on Thursday, and a few showers across Italy and also into Greece and Turkey, but slightly fewer than I'm expecting through today. And the outlook for many is looking sunny and fairly hot.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following a very unsettled, stormy start to the week, the winds over the next 24 hours will ease. It's going to be drier for most with clear spells overnight and plenty of sunshine. during Wednesday. Summer weather returns for the time being, with high pressure building back into the southwest. That's helping to kill off the showers into the evening. But there is an area of rain that's just going to affect the north of Scotland for some time, before becoming restricted to the far north as well as Shetland and Orkney. Elsewhere across the UK, clear spells, lighter winds. As a result, temperatures dipping into the single figures in sheltered spots. But plenty of sunshine first thing, certainly some decent sunny spells across the southern half of the UK. There will be a few mist patches for parts of southwest England first thing. They'll lift pretty quickly in the morning, and then blue skies for much of England and Wales, Northern Ireland likewise, southern Scotland through the central belt. Now for the north of Scotland, here we've got thicker cloud and some patchy light rain through the morning. But even this is tending to drift further north into Orkney and Shetland, and it will clear mainland Scotland during the morning. But the sunshine elsewhere prevails. There will be some build-up of cloud during the morning and into the afternoon. Initially just fair weather cloud across the south, and then thicker medium-level cloud coming into the west, turning the sunshine milky by the afternoon across Northern Ireland, West Wales and Cornwall. But where we've got the sunshine and the light winds elsewhere, it's going to feel very pleasant. Temperatures back up to 22 to 24 Celsius. Then into Thursday, a change in conditions once again as a weather front sinks some rain southeastwards across the UK. This tends to weaken as the day goes on, mostly dry towards the southeast. Friday, more changeable weather to the north with some wind and some showery rain, drier and warmer to the south.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Road users should exercise caution on the A876 Clackmannanshire Bridge due to high winds. Slip roads at Junction 24 Caldra are closed on the M4 eastbound, with diversions in place. Expect 50-minute delays on the A55 westbound between the M53 and the A483 in Cheshire West and Chester. The M25 clockwise exit slip at Junction 25 in Greater London has a lane closed for a tyre change. And on the trains, Northern buses replace trains between Sellafield and Workington, while ScotRail services are suspended between Inverness and Kyle of Lochulsh, Wick and Aberdeen. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello everybody, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Linda, Jubilee and James Schneider. Maybe I need to go back off on a weekend. I have a nice weekend off. I all de-stress and then I come back to the ridiculousness of society. It pushes me over the edge. I can't help it, honestly. Anyway, lots of you guys getting in touch. Who is one of my viewers says, please can you thank Yvette Cooper for not talking to us GB News viewers this morning. I don't want to be subjected to her nonsense. Well, unfortunately for you, whether you think it's nonsense or not, that is the government policy, and I do believe that government ministers owe you guys an explanation, not least because, of course, it's us, you and I, that are paying for these policies. Now, I will bring you into the conversation, I promise, but I went over time having my little rant on that previous subject. We've seen, of course, VAT on private schools. Now there's been suggestion from Lord Neil Kinnock that perhaps the Labour Party should look at adding it to private healthcare. If you sit there and you say, I ain't got private healthcare, so I don't care, Michelle. No. Because do you use a private dentist? Do you use, I don't know, physio, whatever? All of this stuff. What do you think, Linda?
Here's another example of tinkering around the edges. And this is what happens when you see the freight train coming towards you. You've got to be able to do the big moves. And this isn't one of them. I mean, it's not as though... it's not about fairness or unfairness. I just simply don't think it will raise the amount of money. I mean, that's just my calculation.
Was it 2 billion? Remind me. Was it 2 billion it was trying to raise off the top of my head? Yes, it was, too.
And to actually save the NHS... To use an overworked phrase, maybe it's putting a sticking plaster on a compound fracture. The fact of the matter is that what you have to do with the NHS is really take a look at deep root and branch reform, because the fact of the matter is the population in this country is getting older. There's a bigger and bigger part of the population is older, and a smaller and smaller part of the population earning money to put it into the exchequer.
A YouGov poll asked people their opinions on this. 31% of people would apparently support VAT being added, 43 would oppose it, and 26 don't know. James Schneider, your thoughts?
Well, I think we should first of all look at how we can save money by not paying out so much to the profits of private healthcare companies within the NHS. We put in more money and we're poking holes in the bottom of the bucket. Let me give you a concrete example. Eye care. The 5 biggest private providers of eye care to the NHS in the last year their records for were paid £550 million by the NHS to provide private eye care things, cataracts, that sort of thing. Now, of that 550 million, they banked 160 million of it as profit, and they paid 80 million of it back in interest to their private equity owners. So that's a total of something like 40-odd%, over 40% of the money that's paid out that's gone to profit and interest. Now, you might say that the private provider is more efficient, maybe, right? Let's pretend it's more efficient by 10%. It's got to be more efficient by an absolutely colossal amount to make up that money. And this is happening more and more and more and more bits of the NHS, which is part of the reason why as we put in more money, which we need to be doing, we aren't getting the results that we want, because more and more of it is going in this kind of part privatisation, or the private healthcare provider gets to do the easier bit of the work and gets paid for it out of the NHS budget, but the more difficult bit of the work gets done by the NHS. So if they're interested in looking at private healthcare, rather than just saying, well, bung another tax on the consumer, i.e., you have to pay it, which maybe there could be an argument for, but before you even get there, I would like to see them looking at that in the NHS.
Do you know, I would like to see them go completely the opposite direction, so that if you choose to take out private health insurance, because, by the way, obviously accessing the NHS is an absolute impossibility in some cases. Actually, what about giving you a reduction on the national insurance contribution that you make, because you are taking some burden off the NHS? I won't hold my breath. That's not going to happen anytime soon. Look, lots more we need to discuss. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, just like week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The GB
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs Anchor with me, Michelle Dewberry, Linda Jubilee and James Schneider. One of my viewers just got in touch saying, Michelle, do you know what? We are a decent nation. We want to. It's Paul, actually. He says we had a proud history of welcoming genuine asylum seekers. He says, but this goodwill our goodwill is being squandered by this current government. I've got to tell you, Paul, I don't think it's just this current government. Anyway, look, crime. Do you remember when you used to go on holiday? You might have a little look at the recommendations and information. It might tell you to be a little bit careful where you're going. Now, get this, everybody. Some places are now warning visitors to the UK about our high levels of crime. Mexico is one. I mean, it is. I try and be upbeat and positive, everyone, but I mean, come on now. What do you think to this? When you've got Mexico warning travellers to the UK about our crime rates?
Well, I'm going to say something in a minute about Mexico because I think they shot their mouths off a little bit too soon. But I think there is grave concern in London about carrying goods on you. I don't wear a wristwatch at all when I go into London. I don't carry an expensive handbag. I've got a friend who won't wear any expensive wristwatches. He's got one especially that he can wear into London. And I think the incidence of mobile phone theft is very off-putting. Now, my kids have all got dual nationality, British Australian. So I've got a lot of people I speak to in Australia. And I can say for a fact they have all talked about this over the last 6 months. That's only anecdotal. It's not statistical. But one thing I will say is, frankly, in the top 10 most dangerous cities in the world, 9 of them are in Mexico. That's the murder rate.
James?
Well, to jump off that point and to talk about the stats, I mean, we're seeing something quite odd in Britain, which is that violent crime rates are going down, and they're going down year on year. That's not just those that are reported and worked out. There's also the perception of violent crime are also going down. So we not only is violent crime going down, we also think violent crime is going down. But visible crime, you know, phone theft being the most obvious one, is going, you know, hugely up. I think it's like over 425% or something in the last 4 years has gone up on phone theft. And that's what this is, you know, this is really talking about, I think. I mean, everybody, OK, you do that when you walk around London and, yeah, when I'm outside the tube station, I'm not sort of just looking at my phone just like that. But you do that when you're in any other country in a kind of trying to be sensible kind way. I mean, this has got obviously very...
Yeah, but you hit on the key word there, and the key word is perception. And what is happening now is that people in different countries who want to travel to this country, they want to boost our tourism industry, which is very attractive to them, perceive that London is a dangerous place to be. And that is very important because perception leads to reality.
It is, and I mean, really what they're talking about, though, is this visible crime stuff. It is true that if you come to London, you are more likely to get your phone snatched out of your hand now than 10 years ago.
And shoplifting as well.
And shoplifting as well. It is also true, although this is not really something tourists are that worried about, that you're less likely to be a victim of violent crime.
I always say this all the time, but I do not know who these people are, ladies and gents, that keep getting polled, because I certainly don't feel like violent crime is decreasing in this country. I absolutely do not feel like that. And I know that many of you will be shouting at your screens, I can hear you, don't worry about that, saying that you don't won't feel that way either. And of course, knife crime in places like London, it's shot through the roof. Anyway, look, I've enjoyed the debate tonight. If you've missed some of it, you can watch it on Catch Up. But for now, thanks to my panel, thanks to each and every one of you at home. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Night night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Following a very unsettled, stormy start to the week, the winds over the next 24 hours will ease. It's going to be drier for most with clear spells overnight and plenty of sunshine. During Wednesday, summer weather returns for the time being, with high pressure building back into the southwest. That's helping to kill off the showers into the evening. But there is an area of rain that's just going to affect the north of Scotland for some time, before becoming restricted to the far north as well as Shetland and Orkney. Elsewhere across the UK, clear spells, lighter winds. As a result, temperatures dipping into the single figures in sheltered spots. But plenty of sunshine first thing, certainly some decent sunny spells across the southern half of the UK. There will be a few mist patches for parts of southwest England first thing.